recording too, if you don't mind.
I think I did, yeah. All right. We are live. Jake, welcome in. Green Teamers, episode three already. And a more optimistic, a more upbeat Green Teamers, I would say, this week. I kind of spiraled last week at one point looking at the schedule, but I will say a very good week for Celtics basketball. 3-1 on the week, a lot of positives, but in maybe sports hub fashion, maybe media fashion these days. Unfortunately, we have to start with last night, the most recent game. I think that is what we should start with, as it just happened, and it was the best team they played all week. Jake Seymour, co-host of the Green Teamers podcast, was in the building last night. Got to see this beating up close and personal, for better or worse. Jake, what were your main takeaways last night being in the building?
Yeah, I will just start off by saying we didn't have to start negative today. The Celtics won last night. This could have been a totally different podcast. But in all seriousness, last night showed what we talked about in the preseason. This team is a small team. Houston was so much bigger than the Celtics. It was unbelievable. Like, it was one thing to see them on TV and you can watch them and understand how much bigger the Houston is compared to other teams. But when you're watching them in person, and I was seeing Steven Adams warm up, Clint Capella came off the bench. Like, Clint Capella, I feel like could be a starting center on some NBA teams. He's coming off the bench for Houston. Kevin Durant at the 2 spot. Amen Thompson, he's 6'7". He's a point guard. Like, you start looking at this roster and you say to yourself, man, like, and I didn't even mention Sengun and Jabari Smith. Like, those are also guys who were contributors who just outmanned the Celtics when it came to how tall they were and their length. They really struggled against that. They got out to an early 10-point lead in the first quarter. Celtics did punch back late in the second quarter. They went on, I believe it was a 10-2 run, and then Houston just responded before halftime, went up by 18 points, and at that point the game was already decided for much of the second half. I liked what I saw from some Celtics players. I thought Josh Minot had a few good moments. He had a couple deflections, a couple steals, or getting in passing lanes. He looked good. And I think overall, the big picture takeaway from this is his roster construction, is what we spent all offseason talking about. This team might have some good pieces, such as Josh Minot and, Jaylen Brown and Derek White. They're still going to do their thing. But at the end of the day, this team is extremely small, and their centers that they brought in certainly did not match up to anything that Houston threw at them.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think we talked about it a little last week, but Chris Boucher has probably been the biggest disappointment so far of this Celtics season, especially for a guy they brought in that was supposed to be an impact player. He hasn't really done much at all. You barely see him. I know Joe used him a little bit more this week than at times last week, but he's been a massive disappointment. And yeah, you talk about the size of Houston. They're the biggest team, I think, in NBA history. Kevin Durant at the 2 is preposterous. It really is to see out there. It's unbelievable. And they shot the lights out. Terry Eason was, on fire, especially in the first half. That's an NBA title contender. That's the difference. That's how teams felt when the Celtics came into town the last 2 years. You just couldn't match up with the firepower. You might be able to run with them in small stretches, but the overall talent, the size on that roster, and I think Sengun might be the most underrated player in the league. I think he's a top 5 player under 25. He's unbelievable with and without the ball, passing, shooting, just does everything right. I know people in Boston probably don't get a chance to watch him all that often, but he's as good as it gets. He's kind of an old school player too. He's not, an athletic freak. Obviously he's, athletic, makes good plays, athletic plays, but he's more of a cerebral guy who just knows where to be, knows where his teammates are going to be. And, Durant's talked about at length that he is not used to being as open as he's been open on the Rockets because of the talent they have on the roster. And I think the Celtics defense was, it's not like, I want to be critical. I think we were very critical last week, rightfully so, but I'm not going to hammer them for losing to the Houston Rockets last week. They played on a back-to-back. They had 3 very good wins. That's the Houston Rockets just right now. Celtics fans might not want to hear it. They're on a different level than you are. And that they're in the upper echelon. They're with the, I want to say the Cavs, but you beat the Cavs this week. They're on the, Oklahoma City Thunder. Like they're that level. I think you caught the Cavs at a good time. We'll get into that in a little bit, but I got some of the first half stats in front of me. The Rockets shot 57% in the first half. They shot 9 of 16, 56% from 3 in the first half. 56% from three. That's ridiculous. The Celtics 7 of 21, 33%. And the free throw disparity in that game was another thing too. It was 10-1 in the first half. I think it ended up being like 22-3 or something like that. Rebounds in the first half, 31-19. They're just dominating you. They had 10 turnovers in the first half. The Rockets did. The Celtics only had 4. It didn't matter. Like that's how badly they were beating you. Second chance points, they were beating you 9-4. Like, and then you look at the scores from the first half. Kevin Durant has 20 points. Jaylen Brown has 10, 2, and 5, which is fine, but it's not enough. And are they going to have games like the Cavs where they catch a team and they play their best game of the season and they get a win? Sure. But I think when you play a team like the Rockets, when they play a team like the Rockets this year, that's going to be the result, more often than not, just because of the talent on the roster. What'd you think of Missoula last night?
Yeah, so I was going to get into that with Missoula. I thought this seems kind of minuscule, but I was curious going into the game if he would play. Amari Williams, I wanted to see more from him. He only played 6 minutes, and as the game progressed and he didn't check into the game, I was kind of thinking to myself, well, I guess Missoula doesn't want to burn one of his games because he's on a two-way contract, and NBA players only get, if you're on a two-way deal, you only have 50 NBA games that you can play at. So I was kind of thinking to myself, well, I guess that makes sense if he doesn't want to play him tonight. We're only in November, so it makes sense the Celtics wouldn't want to, burn one of his 50 games on a game where they're kind of outmatched. But I would have liked to have seen him because he's one of the only players who's over 6'10", and they needed length last night. And then they went in garbage time last night. He played 6 minutes, and I was like, if you're gonna put him in and burn the 50 game or one of the 50 games, you should have played him earlier. Let him I would have liked to have seen him come in the second half or third quarter and see how he could perform when the Celtics were kind of trying to dig themselves out of that hole. And just to throw him in garbage time, I felt like was kind of almost useless in some ways. I mean, it was great to see him on the floor and get to see some NBA action with him, but I don't know. I would like to see more, especially how they were struggling to contain, it felt like, the big men. And I think the biggest thing that I felt from the game was the Celtics continued to allow Houston to shoot the three-point ball, and they had success with it. Houston was, like you said, Skaz, he was shot over 60% from three. And as much as we want to talk about the length and how that was such a factor in the game in terms of just seeing how much the difference between the two teams, it really wasn't an overall difference in the game outcome. Houston bullied them on the three-point line, and Missoula wants to talk about the 2-on-1 offense, and the Celtics shoot a lot of threes. They're still among the NBA for the most three-pointers attempted per game this season, and they kind of got beat at their own game, if that makes sense. And I thought that was strange. If Houston was going to shoot a lot of threes and try and beat you like that, this game should have been a lot closer than what it was. And for Missoula's team to come up that short on a game like that, I thought was disappointing. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, and I really think the Amari Williams thing is a great point because he does have limited time. Like on that two-way, you're going to have to pick your spots. That did feel like kind of an odd spot. Maybe you just want to see him get his feet wet. Preliminary, we know we're going to lose. Just let the kid get some minutes. So from that perspective, I understand it. But at the same time, he did just kind of burn one of the kids' games. So I think that's a really good point you brought up. And yeah, you mentioned the three-point shooting. I mentioned the first half numbers. I pulled up the second half numbers. The Celtics shot 44 threes in that game. They made 14 of them, 32%. Not good enough. Not good enough. The Rockets only shot 29 threes in that game. They made 19 of them, 66%. So the Celtics shot 15 more threes and made 5 less. Like, that's not winning formula for anybody. That's especially not a winning formula for Celtics basketball right now for Joe Missoula. And then the free throw disparity, like, you had numbers earlier in this week. I can't remember if we talked about it on the Green Teamers or if it was in the Jock Lounge, but how they don't really drive to the paint. Their pull-up, jumper numbers aren't exactly like where you want them to be. But their free throw disparity in that game, the Rockets shot 35 free throws. They only shot 71% from the line, which isn't great. 25 of 35. The Celtics, 7 for 7. 7 free throws is not enough, especially when you're playing a team with the size. And I get it. You want to keep it on the outside. You're not going to drive into the paint against the Rockets, but if you're shooting 40, you're just chucking at that point. And there's been a lot of chucking talk on the Sports Hub and people's feelings on the Celtics chucking. That was an example of them chucking against the Rockets. And another guy I want to bring up too, you mentioned Missoula. I think two Celtics players who we kind of expected. This is kind of my angle for the week. The Celtics went 3-1. We knew they were going to lose to the Rockets. Everybody felt that way. My bigger picture Celtics point for this week is, and I heard Gasper say this, and I agree with the sentiment of his point. I don't agree entirely with the point, but basically he said Anthony Simons is going to be kind of the lightning rod, the whatever you want to call it for the Celtics team. As he goes, they go. I think that's a little, too, on the nose. I think that's a little too pinpointing one small thing. But for me, what I've seen is Peyton Pritchard and Derek White have struggled a little bit to start the year, especially shooting. I know Pritchard they both had decent games earlier in the week with 15 points each. I think White, it was 18, 19 at one point earlier in the week too. But you saw in that Houston game, there are times where Peyton Pritchard, just his size, that team, I don't want to call him unplayable, but in a series against the Rockets, like, what do you do with Peyton Pritchard? And I know there aren't too many teams like the Rockets, but bigger guards are becoming kind of the norm in the NBA, and I think you've seen Peyton Pritchard struggle a little bit with the starting role. And I think you've seen this week Josh Minott and Anthony Simons, when they're playing well, the Celtics are winning basketball games. And they're two unsung heroes, but I think there needs to be consideration to start Simons and Minott every night going forward and let Peyton Pritchard come off the bench. For me, that was my biggest takeaway of this week of Celtics basketball was Josh Minott and Anthony Simons. It's just them kind of figuring it out, finding their roles, and playing, winning, contributing basketball.
Absolutely. And I was just trying to go back to those numbers we were talking about in the Jock Lounge earlier this week. For right now, the Celtics, they're taking the fourth most field goal attempts at 94.4 per game, and they're 20th in field goals made at 41.1 per game. And when you look at their three-point attempts, a lot of it stems from three-pointers. 47.3 of their shots per game are three-pointers attempted. That's an NBA high. They're 6th in makes and 26th in three-point percentage. So looking at that, obviously, theoretically, the Celtics should have more three-pointers made than any other team because they're taking the most of any team in the NBA. But their three-point percentage is dramatically lower than the league average, and they're at 20th. So I don't understand why the game plan is to always. It feels like they're very reliant on the three ball still. And Mazzulla got very snippy and defensive when it came to defending his offensive philosophy. And I'm not saying that Mazzulla tells them all the time you need to shoot threes and that he's focused on three-pointer attempt. But I will say he has told us that one of the most important stats in basketball is three-pointers and the attempt rate. So I'm sitting here, what am I supposed to take away from that? If Joe Mazzulla is telling us in press conferences that the three-point percentage and the attempts are some of the most important stats in basketball, and that's a metric that he obviously heavily values, and they're shooting a lot of threes, but they're not making them, well, does that come down to coaching or does that come down to players not executing? I guess it's maybe a mixture of both, but at the end of the day, at some point, Mazzulla has to look at this team and figure out, okay, my team can't shoot the three ball like we did last year. We have to change. And I'm not seeing that from Mazzulla. I'm not seeing that from the Celtics. And they had a good week. They really did. And the numbers that we talked about earlier, this was before the Cleveland win, they're currently 28th in two-pointers attempted and second in three-pointers attempted, 25th in percentage of points scored inside the paint, averaging 6 points per game on plays with a cutter, 27th in the league. Now, those numbers might have changed. I'm in a second to go back and update all that. But I over 2 or 3 games, I don't think they would dramatically change. And certainly after last night, we didn't see any kind of sign that the Celtics numbers would increase or decrease based on that. It's quite starking when you look at this team and you see how poor they are at making three-pointers, yet they're still relying on it. It almost comes off as like a lazy way to play basketball of just shooting three-pointers.
Yeah, it's very frustrating because the messaging is kind of mixed. Snippy Joe Mazzulla, I think we're going to see quite a bit of this year. And for better or worse, we're going to talk about Joe Mazzulla a lot because the roster has been so good that it's been hard to really critique Mazzulla or dive into his coaching or Jason Tatum and Drew Holiday, Porzingis, Horford. Like when you have those guys on a roster with Brown and White, it masks a lot of problems. And this year you're seeing some of it. And you mentioned those numbers. It's staggering. It really is staggering because what are they? I still think they're trying to figure it out. What is their identity? How are they going to win basketball games? I think the best example of that was the Cleveland game, was just them coming out. And it was It was Sam Hauser hitting threes in the first half. It was Josh Minot contributing. Luka Garza was decent in that game. Like, it's not a sustainable recipe for success, but I think that is kind of the blueprint. I hate going back to the Isaiah Thomas, Bridgie Celtics, but they're going to have to be a gut and grind team. And just before we really get into earlier in the week, on Mazzulla, I thought he was, whatever against the Rockets. I don't blame him in any way, but the Philly game, that was my Mazzulla game of the week. Friday night against the 76ers. And you escape. They escaped with a 1-point win. And I think that's the best way to say it, because I thought Mazzulla was not good down the stretch in that game. I didn't think he utilized his timeouts correctly. I know the Celtics missed some free throws. Jaylen Brown had another bad turnover. Peyton Pritchard getting trapped in one of those circumstances too. I kind of put on the coach. I get it. Pritchard should know how to, beat that and pass his way out of it, but he was kind of put in a bad spot. So for me, that's where I'm really watching Mazzulla, is in these close games late. And I know the Celtics escaped with a win, but I did not love his coaching down the stretch in that 76ers game. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I just think it was another blown lead. So when you look at Mazzulla as a whole, and this has become a narrative and a theme with him, is that the Celtics are struggling when they get up big to put away a team. And you can chop it up to saying that there's a lot of new pieces and those guys have to learn and understand what it takes to do that. But that also happened in the playoffs against the Knicks. And it happened last regular season. So maybe it's not on the new players. It's on Mazzulla. It's on the Jaylen Brown. It's on Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, the guys who are still here from a season ago. And I just think, I don't know why that happens. I want to ask Mazzulla about that and try and get his perspective on it, because this team should be good enough to close out a game on the road when they're up by 20 points. It's inexcusable. We were good enough last year, especially at home. It's inexcusable to be up by 20 points and still have to claw your way in the fourth quarter to get a narrow single-digit win. It's or lose. It's unacceptable for that to happen. So, yeah, I think anything that Mazzulla does in a game where they lead by a lot and then they end up clawing their way back into the fourth quarter, that needs to be questioned. Whatever happens, whatever is related to that, needs to be evaluated and understood. It needs to be fixed, because right now it's not being fixed. It's been a trend over the last year. I don't recall it happening a lot in the championship season. I could maybe just be thinking of the highs of that season and where they ultimately got. They reached their goal. But I remember it happening a good amount last year, and they were good enough to overcome it. This year, you're not good enough to overcome it every single time.
Yeah, and just on your point there, they had the fewest blown leads in the NBA in the fourth quarter on the championship year. So they were different.
Yeah, so they were different. Yeah, I was right. It was not just remembering the glory days. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we're already reliving the glory days. But yeah, they and I think a lot of that has to do with Tatum, the roster construction, all that. But it's very frustrating from a fan perspective, because you never feel safe. And with this roster, you're never going to feel safe, this season. And I mentioned Minot and Simons. Two other guys that I do think we should really talk about is one, Jaylen Brown. I think Jaylen Brown has been very, very good this year, maybe better, a little bit better than I expected. He's embraced kind of that scoring role, and he's always been a scorer. Don't get it wrong, but I think the way he's doing it this year is a little different. He is taking some more three-pointers. He's being a little more proactive throughout the course of the game. I think a lot of times, at least for me, I always felt like Jaylen Brown was one of the best first-quarter players in the league. And I'm not saying that as a knock. You need a starter. You need a guy that comes out of the gates flying. And I feel like for the last 2, 3, even 4 years, Jaylen Brown has been that first bucket guy that 9, 12 points in the first quarter kind of gets the Celtics going, and then Tatum would ease his way in and then start to pick it up second half and really dominate. And I've seen a more consistent Jaylen Brown, a more engaged Jaylen Brown. And I think that is a huge positive. I think he's playing a little banged up already, which makes me a little nervous. And then the other guy I think is Neemias Queta. We mentioned Minot and Simons. I think Neemias Queta he's been better than I expected. I understand he's still kind of a project. He's still kind of raw. He's 25, 26. He's been in the league for a bit, but he's shown me that he can be a rotation big. I don't know if he can be a legit starting big in the NBA. He's going to have to be this season, but he's shown me that he's at least a valuable rotation big. He can give you 10 points, double-digit rebounds when he needs to. That Cavs game, I thought he was really good against Mobley and Allen. Not that they were, at their peak or anything in that game, but a really good effort from Keita. He's been a surprise. And Luka Garza's a guy who was kind of, what's this guy going to give? He still is brutal to watch run up and down the court. It's like he's got weights on his ankles at times, but he's a productive, can snag a couple rebounds. He's got good footwork in the post. So if we're going to try and be positive, try and talk a couple positives here. My biggest takeaways was this week was, I got Jaylen Brown continues to dominate, 35-4 against the Cavs, 32-3-6 against the 76ers. Minot 11-15-2. I don't know how often you're going to get that line from him. And then Keita 10-13-3 against the Cavs. So that was their best win of the year. That was their best game of the year. Let's hope that, they have many more to come. But, what was your takeaway? We want to be positive on the Green Teamers. We got to live up to the namesake a little bit. Wednesday night, they beat the Cavs. I think a lot of people expected them to get blown out. What were your takeaways from the Cavs game?
Yeah, I just think overall, I just want to circle back to Jaylen Brown. Sorry, really quick.
Yeah, of course.
Because I was looking this up when you were talking about it. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jaylen Brown is leading the Celtics with 9.4 paint points per game, and that he's leading them and is by far their most successful player. The Celtics as a team, they only have exactly 40 paint points per game, which is 28th in the league. I really don't think it's coincidental that Jaylen Brown's the best player on the team right now and is playing the best basketball and is leading the team in scoring around the basket. I just want to put that out there because that is something that should not go unnoticed. It should be valued, especially as we've talked about the three-pointers not falling consistently, it feels like, for this team. In terms of the Cavaliers game from last Wednesday, once again, Jaylen Brown, you highlighted it there a little bit. He had 30 points in that game. And like you said, he's taking over not only the scoring, but I also saw, especially against the Cavaliers, his assist numbers are starting to go up. And he's starting to find more plays. He's averaging about 4.3 right now, which is about the same what he was at last year. He was at 4.5 assists per game a season ago. So I would like to see that number go up in this season. I think he needs to be more of a facilitator. And I think Wednesday night, maybe his number didn't show that in the box score. It wasn't reflective of his performance, but I felt like there were opportunities where he was a little bit more looking for the extra cutter, looking for the extra guy, while still trying to do his thing. And if the Celtics are, if the Celtics want to be good, they need to rely on Brown to be the leading scorer, but also the lead facilitator, because I feel like his mentality of scoring in the paint and driving to the basket, getting to the free throw line will help the Celtics and rub off on other players, and entirely that could result to more wins or at least more competitive games for this team moving forward. And I think Wednesday night was kind of a good example of that with Jaylen Brown and the Celtics.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I also think, just keeping it big picture, I think Jaylen Brown learning how to be the number one and pass out of doubles and stuff like that, like, I think it's going to be invaluable when Tatum comes back. Like, I think it's going to be, not that he's going to be a different player, but it's just a different wrinkle, a different tool he can add to his bag, like just a different look they can have with Tatum. And he's never going to be a double-digit assist guy. He's never even going to be like an 8-9 assist guy. But if he can be 5 to 7, 6 to 8, like, that's where the Celtics need him to be. He's got to at least be a threat to dish the ball off, which is something that, I feel like he would hover around 3-4 the last couple seasons, maybe 5 here and there. And he would have nights where he'd get close, but that's a wrinkle that I'm gonna like to see him add. And just on the whole week, they're gonna be a grind. Like, that's who they are now. It's not gonna be bombs away. I mean, it is bombs away. I shouldn't say that, but it's gonna be more of a hustle bombs away than a finesse bombs away as it was. And I think that's kind of a good thing. These guys need that. Pritchard and White, though, that's if we're going full circle. Pritchard and White are the two guys I would say I would call them a disappointment to start the season. Maybe a little strong. Where are you on them two?
So White, I have a little bit more leniency toward, because I think he is the best all-around player the Celtics have in terms of scoring the basketball at every level. He's great defensively. And I hate to keep bringing it back up, but it goes back to the three-point shooting. I feel like they're turning him into this marksman three-point shooter, and he's not that. Let him drive to the basket. There is nothing. I don't care if there's analytics that tell me that teams are better off shooting three-pointers. There is nothing wrong with players driving to the basket, getting to the free throw line or taking a mid-range jumper. Look at Durant last night. Durant only took 3 3-pointers. Most of his attempts were at the elbow, and he had one on the left side, kind of near the baseline, like a mid-range jumper. I think a 17-foot jumper. That is okay. That is one of the best players in the NBA. Mazzulla said it himself. He is a Hall of Famer. It is okay if you shoot inside the three-point line and outside of the paint area. Durant only had one shot in the paint that he made. It was right near the restricted area. So why? I'm not trying to say Derek White is Kevin Durant here, but why is it okay for Durant to work and operate like that, but it's not okay for Derek White and others on the Celtics to do that? I think Derek White would be a much better player if the Celtics allowed him, and it seems like they're not allowing him to go and attack the basket and play around mid-range opportunities. As far as Peyton Pritchard, I feel like Peyton Pritchard is what he is at this point. I don't think his ceiling can go much higher. I think he kind of reached the pinnacle of where he's at. And frankly, I think it's just because of his size. Like, he's a small player. And I don't mean that as a slight toward him. It's just the reality of the situation. He's a tremendous option off the bench. He was the 6th man of the year last year. He was tremendous off the bench. When you put him in starting lineups, especially, I was surprised to see him starting last night. When you put him in starting lineups against a team like Houston that is so much taller than you, it makes it difficult for him to have success in this league. He's great off the bench. He is a great 6th man, and I think he could start on some teams, and he will start. He is starting right now for the Celtics, and he's, we talked about he's not playing well, but maybe he can play a little bit better as a starter. I think that's definitely plausible, but don't expect Peyton Pritchard to become this 4th option like it was last year with Porzingis and Holiday. He's not going to reach that ceiling of it, and I don't think fans should expect that of him, and it's unfair to even consider that an option for Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah, I've been probably viewed anti-Peyton Pritchard. I'm not at all. I think Peyton Pritchard is a fantastic piece, but I'm with you. He is what he is. He was never going to be an all-star. Celtics fans, love you, mean it. I am a Celtics fan. I've said this for the last 2 years. This is not a new take. People say he could have been a starter on 25 teams in the league. Scal, no,
not 25. Maybe I could see 10 or 15, but not 25.
Even I think
that is kind of. I'm leaning on the higher side.
The guards in the NBA are so good, so good. Trae Young wasn't an all-star. Peyton Pritchard isn't even in his league. It's not. And I'm not trying to slight Peyton Pritchard. I'm just trying to put it into perspective that there are levels in the NBA, and Peyton Pritchard is a nice little piece, but he is not an NBA starter. He's just not. And not that Anthony Simons is head and shoulders better than him, but I do think there's going to come the point where he might be a better option to start. I know he's a high volume scorer. He's a little bigger. If you can get him to buy in, maybe he'll play some defense. We've seen it. I thought Grandy, because one of the lucky things about being in studio for the game is you hear Grandy and Max, and I recommend everybody listen to Grandy and Max. They're the best in the business. Been doing it forever.
I agree. I listen to Grandy and Max when I'm at the game. I put a headphone in, and little, I guess, secret here for Sports Hub listeners, the app is different than what you listen on the radio broadcast. There is no delay. Well, there's a little bit of a delay, but not really. Yeah. So when I'm listening to the game on my phone and I'm there live, it's only seconds behind of what actually just happened on the floor. So, and also the dump button doesn't work. So there's that. It's not FCC regulated. So you get to, if a caller swears or talent swears by accident, because it happens, people trip up, it happens. You get to hear it. So let's download the app. On the App Store, it's on Google Play, whatever the Android App Store is. 98.5 The Sports Hub. Download it and enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Grandy pointed this out, and it was I can't remember the exact instance, but I remember him saying it. It was Simons was fighting for a rebound. It might have been an offensive rebound, and he got a piece of it, and then it got tipped back around, and he fought for it again. And I think he lost the battle, and he might end up getting called for a foul or something like that. But Grandy mentioned that when he was walking to the bench, the timeout was called, Mazzulla was right up at him saying, hey, that's what we want. That's what we need. That's who we need you to be. Get grimy, basically. Be the guy. Don't be afraid to get in there. And I think that's, for better or worse, not for better or worse, for better. We're going to say for better. You need Anthony Simons to play well for 2 reasons. One, because he can be a valuable piece to the Celtics team and help you get some wins this year, maybe push for a playoff spot. Two, because you could sell him. You could sell him at the trade deadline. You could get something for him. He's one of the few really movable assets you have that could actually bring you something in return if he starts to show the league. You're telling me a title contender doesn't want a guy who can drop 20 off the bench? Like, he is a valuable piece around the league, especially if you can show teams that he's willing to buy in to a winning culture. Because the Celtics may not be a winning team right now. They still have winning culture. They still want to play the right way. I still think Jaylen Brown, the guys in that room are more than motivated. And I'm sorry, we mentioned Simons there, and then there was something else you mentioned at the end that I wanted to. Oh, Derek White. I think your Derek White analysis is spot on. You mentioned it the last 2 weeks. You really got into it last week, but I think who the Celtics are trying to make Derek White is you need to cater to his game more. Instead of just trying to cater the game, like him to the game plan needs to cater a little bit more to Derek White. When you have the talent the Celtics have had the last, 2 to 3 seasons, that talent can adapt to any game plan and can make any game plan and any style of NBA basketball look successful. When the talent decreases, the game plan has to be better, and you have to play to the talent on your roster strengths. You can't just have you need to know your guys. You need to. This is a problem I had with how they use Tatum at times too, because he's played every position from 1 to 5 in different roles. But that's a story for a different day. When the talent is lesser, you have to play to Derek White's strengths. Cutting, don't turn him into DeMar DeRozan where he's taking 20, free throw line jumpers a game, but get him to the basket, get him going downhill. He's one of the better slashers in the league. Like, he's not Tyrese Maxey's speed or athleticism, but that style of play, a little bit all over the place. Maxey's a little bit more, and I say this complimentary, he's kind of like a water bug. He's everywhere all the time. He's so fast. He might even be faster than De'Aaron Fox, it feels like, at times. I want to see Derek White cutting, moving, not just a spot up, or especially on the breaks when he pulls up for 3 on a breakaway. I'm like, what are we doing? I know that drives
me absolutely insane because Derek White is such a better player than that, and he should be used better than just pulling up with 20 seconds on the shot clock for a 3-pointer. It is so infuriating when I see that, and it happens way too often with him.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people feel that way. I can hear my dad screaming in New York when Derek White pulls up for a 3 on a breakaway. Like that's just how it feels, and it's something we've had to get used to because the talent would outweigh little things like that. But you don't have the talent to outweigh that anymore. So I'm all in on your Derek White analysis. It's something that I've been watching more keenly over the last week, and I hope it is something we see adjust. A good week for Celtics basketball. Some negatives. I think Mazzulla is still the ire of a lot of people right now. Do you have any more overall takeaways, from the week?
I just want to give just one thing on Pritchard. I will say I do appreciate him being as honest as he is with the media. He gives a lot of quotes and is very forthcoming when it comes to being made available and providing his thoughts on the situation for the Celtics, whether like last night was a terrible loss. And give you guys some, inside scoop on how it works usually at games is there's a press conference, obviously, with Mazzulla post-game. Mazzulla talks, and then players come in usually, and they have locker room access. Well, last night, there was only locker room access, and there was no players at the podium. And, what I kind of thought of that was, I guess there was, after a tough loss like that, it's very common across sports for players to not come out for a press conference, but be made available in the locker room. Like it happens. It's very common in sports. It's not a bad thing. I was not like a headline thing. Like fans don't like overreact to that. It happens all the time. I can count numerous times it happened to me throughout, my young career, I guess you could say. But Pritchard was one of the guys who made himself available last night in the locker room, and I just thought that's a good example of the type of player and the type of person that he is. That even though they lost last night, he's been playing pretty poor to start the season. He was still around to make himself available for the media and didn't let that discourage his availability. I will just point out too, just to kind of support your thing, Grandy just tweeted this out. Derek White, 25% on 3-point shooting. Peyton Pritchard, 18%. That's 181st and 186th in the league. And by the way, Peyton Pritchard, dead last.
Dead last?
Yes.
I would
186 out of 186.
Not good.
No.
I would say. Yeah, that's got to change, and I think it will change. We're not, and yeah, Pritchard, he's been a consummate professional. He asked for a trade at one point, and the Celtics said no because they knew he was a valuable piece, and he is a valuable piece. I don't want people to think I don't think Peyton Pritchard is good, because I do. I just think he's very limited, and they need to try and maximize his role more. It just the thing with the Celtics team, I can't believe those stats. Can you just give them to me one more time, please?
Sure. It was so Sean Graney tweeted this out. Derek White, 25% from three, 181st out of 186th. Pritchard, 18%, 186 out of 186 eligible 3-point shooters. They combined, ready, for 40% last year from three.
Do you have minimum attempts on that list? Like, is there
I don't. I'm just.
Okay.
I Googled Peyton Pritchard to find a quote that he had last night, and just to refresh my memory. And I just saw Grandy tweeted this out. So if you go to Sean Grandy play-by-play, you can see the stats. But just to put you in, he included a screenshot of the players who are around between Derek White and Peyton Pritchard for the bottom 7 in the league.
Let me see.
Emmanuel Quickly, Trey Mann, Nikola Jokic, which I'd actually. Oh, that's Denver Nikola Jokic, Lou Dort, and Peyton Pritchard. So you got some good names in there. I mean, Jokic.
Yeah, Jokic.
But Jokic ain't shooting a lot of threes.
Not exactly Ray Allen back there. Yeah. And then Lou Dort. At least if you see like the other problem too with guys on the list is they're giving you something else. Like Lou Dort's a lockdown defender. Nikola Jokic is the best player on the face of the earth. Like Peyton Pritchard, you're a 3-point shooter, bud. You're supposed to be knocking him down. You can't be dead last in the league. Like that Tom Brady, like leading the league in interceptions. I know that's a bad comp, but like you can't have that. That would be, I can't even think of something to equate it to. It'd be like Jeremy Swayman, like with the worst goals against average. You're like, dude, he's a goalie. He's supposed to stop the shots. Like, yeah. So that's troubling, but I do think it is something where you can have a week where you go 3-1, and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard are struggling. That's a good thing for the Celtics team. That means they're starting to figure something out, and I think they are. And like we like to wrap up every week, we kind of preview the next week. So look, I thought they might not win a game, Jake, by the time we talked today. I was deep in a spiral last weekend. I thought they were going to be 0-7 at this point, so I'm very happy they're 3-4. And you look at their upcoming schedule, they play the Jazz and the Wizards at home. Two very winnable games. The Jazz, Lauri Markkanen, old Celtics buddy, Svi Mihaluk's on that team. You got the rookie Kyle Flipkowski and his Tommy Fleetwood-esque, very much older girlfriend, I believe, that may be controlling his wife, but that's a story for a different day if you want to dive into NBA Twitter on that one. Duke, not a big fan of her, from what I believe. Look, we got to mix in the NBA conspiracy theories when we get the chance, Jake. I don't get a chance to drop them off.
No comment.
No comment. So are you aware of Kyle Flipkowski?
I was not. I was. Maybe I had some additional reading.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. It's interesting. I'll say that. Interesting to say the least. And then the Wizards, I believe, on Wednesday at home as well. You see the rookie Trey Johnson. They stink. They're the Wizards, okay? They're terrible. You should beat them. Cam Whitmore's there shooting 50 shots a game, very inefficient. So enjoy that one. And then you have 2 games in Orlando at the Magic. I think, once again, I'm going to ask 3-1. Split with the Magic. Win one of those games. You should beat the Jazz and the Wizards. And Celtics should have a winning record the next time we record a Green Teamers, Jake.
They should. I mean, we thought they were going to be 0-7, so this is a step in the right direction for the Celtics, sitting at 3-4. I will say, just to wrap up here, just to go back to Houston really fast, Ime Udoka came back last night at the Garden, and he had some good stuff to say about Tatum and just how there was, he was hopeful that Tatum was going to be back to what he was, pre-injury, and that, he reached out to him because he had 2 torn ACL injuries, so he kind of relayed on that experience and was able to, I guess, share that with Tatum. And then the other person that was, I think, notable in terms of Tatum's, rehab process is Durant. So Durant told CLNS Media in the locker room that he's just killing his rehab. He looks great. And he just thought that someone who just had an Achilles surgery in the playoffs just looks amazing. He said he didn't think he was dunking when he had his Achilles in 2019. And that was kind of the one guy in the one situation a lot of people were pointing at when Tatum went down, because Durant was one of the few players who returned to his normal self, or at least as close to that as you can possibly get post-Achilles injury, and he did it on the wrong side of 30. Tatum's doing it much younger in his career, much earlier. And Tatum's trying to skip what Durant did, and he doesn't want to skip the year off that Durant had. Now, if you remember, it was 2019 in the finals. He went to Brooklyn that offseason and then missed the whole season before he came back. It came back in the start for the 2020-21 season, I believe. He missed the COVID season pretty much. So that is, I thought, was notable. I thought it was important to hear and want to relay some of that good news to the Green Teamer listeners.
Yeah, and that's why Jake's here, because he's a pro. He doesn't forget things like I would have forgot. Those are two great points. Udoka, I'm sure he had a busy weekend in Boston. Another side note for another day. But yeah, good to hear him back. Good to hear him talk about Tatum. And then on Durant, a really good point. I actually had a note written down that I saw. I can't remember who wrote it, but I think it was CLNS or somebody that Tatum's mom, I believe, actually reached out to Durant and called him after the surgery, or he called her, one or vice versa. And he's just been. These guys are close. USA Basketball, the NBA is a brotherhood. Like they're the union, all that stuff. I know people hate it, but they're friends. They played together forever. They've gone to battle. Tatum has been playing against these guys in the playoffs since his rookie year. So I'm a Durant guy. I know some people don't like him, but I think he's fantastic for the sport. And who would know better than him? That's exactly what you want to hear about Jason Tatum. And he's going to be that little, carrot at the end of the stick that people are trying to get to. That's what they're going to sell us all year. And if they have weeks like this where they go 3-1, then I'm okay with them selling it to us. But if you're 0-3, 0-4 on the week, it's a really tough sell. So
absolutely. And the other thing with Durant too, just to bring up another point about how close everyone is, not only the Team USA basketball perspective where Tatum knows Durant, but who did Durant play with in Phoenix? Oh, Bradley Beal, who is best friends with Tatum. They're both from the same place. So like just another small world example of just how small this league is, where everyone knows everyone, and gone are kind of the days of, I hate you, this is a rivalry, I'm gonna beat you as hard as I can, like the 90s and 80s and 70s. Those days are kind of long gone in the NBA, and maybe for better in some ways.
In some ways, I would agree. I like a good rivalry every once in a while, but yeah, we got a fake bench clearing in the World Series last night, which was nice. But yeah, it's.
Did you see
real.
Ron Artest's kid? I saw this on Twitter. His son dressed up as him, like in the Mouse in the Palace. He had like a cut Pacers jersey, like it was all ripped at the neck.
Love that. Why not keep it in the family there? But yeah,
so maybe for that is for the better. It's not
for the better.
Should be.
Yes, I would agree with that. But yeah, another great week of Green Teamers. Jake, I think we've exhausted all my notes. A good week of Celtics basketball, more positive Green Teamers. I woke up feeling good today, ready to roll. So I'm happy. This should be another week of winning basketball for the Celtics. Do you have any final thoughts?
I would just say final thoughts would be the scheduling. The Celtics have played a lot of games so far. They've played some of the most in the NBA. They're already at 7. They had 6 entering last night. Houston, by the way, just to throw a little cherry on top of the Houston discussion, they played 4 games and arrived in Boston after a road game Wednesday night in Toronto. So they had more rest in Boston for a Celtics home game than the Celtics did. The Celtics were on a second half of a back-to-back, playing in Philadelphia, and then on top of that played hosted Cleveland and then played in New Orleans on a second half of back-to-back again last Monday. I believe. Wait, was that a back-to-back? I believe it was. They played the Pistons Sunday, right? Yeah.
Monday, yeah.
So just putting it out there as another example.
That was a very Green Teamer point of view, Jake. That was a very Green Teamer of you right there.
I just thought it was notable because I was looking at the records last night, and I knew the Celtics had played a lot. I mentioned in the notebook I wrote for 95thesportshub.com, and you can check out all the other game coverage from there, 5 takeaways from last night. And I was put it in that notebook. I was like, wow, that's a lot of games. And then I got to the game last night, and I looked at I was reading the game notes, and I saw the record. I was like, wait a minute, Houston only played 4 games? And then I started looking at their schedules. Like, they got here Wednesday night, and I knew they got here early. I understood that. I read that earlier in the week, and I knew that. I just didn't correlate it to that meaning that they would only play 2 fewer games than the Celtics, and that was a league low. No other team played 4 games or fewer other than the Rockets. So I thought that was kind of – Celtics got the poor end of the stick. They played a healthy team that was well-rested. That was it's a really good team. Not that was why they lost, but they were kind of climbing uphill. I guess that's my Green Teamers point of the day, Scaz, for you. Just to end on a little positive note, a little excuse for you Green Teamers.
I believe we call that a scheduled loss, I believe is what they call
scheduled
that.
Loss, yeah. It's like when you go to work and you're like, I'm not really feeling it today. So you know what? Next Tuesday I'm gonna call out sick. It's my scheduled sick day.
Scheduled sick day. Jake Seymour, as always, bringing the fantastic points, wrapping us up nicely there. Another week of Green Teamers. Jake, thanks so much. You've been absolutely crushing it. Couldn't be happy
Appreciate
to
us,
have
guys.
you
Love to
alongside.
do
And
this.
we'll do it. I think the Celtics play next Sunday night at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, we'll
So
figure out a time between now and
maybe we
then.
do post game from that. I don't know what your schedule is, but yeah, we
Yeah.
could do that. We could do that off the air. But Jake, thanks so much, and happy green teaming, everybody.
See ya.